Hi, and welcome to the 7th episode of Differential Diagnosis. We'll be differentially diagnosing Season 1, Episode 8 of House M.D, called Poison. My name's Harvey, and I'll be one of your co-hosts, and your other co-host for the show will be Gaz.
Hello, it's always a pleasure to be co-hosting this podcast with you, Harvey. Hopefully we'll get down and dirty with this new episode, Poison.
I hope so too. I hope so. I'm never sure if you're trying to be creepy and unenthusiastic at the same time with the intros.
It's a very, very subtle art to try and be as unenthusiastic and as creepy as possible. Because there's like a thing with being creepy that you kind of have to be enthusiastic about being creepy, but to pull off being I don't give a crap and creepy at the same time, it takes a lot of training.
You have, and you've got better and better as we've gone on.
Oh, thank you.
Well, so this week we're looking at the episode Poison. We've obviously freshly watched it, and we would invite you to watch it as well. Not the most memorable episode. I actually didn't remember this one while watching it, which trying to really put you in the mood to know that this will be a really interesting analysis. But Gaz, if people have watched the episode and then instantly forgotten about it, please give us a synopsis of the episode.
Okay, just in case you've just been struck on the head and lost all semblance of any of the details of this episode, and yet you're watching a podcast about that very episode, Poison is another first season episode of House, which first aired on January the 25th, 2005. House tries to blow off a case of a sick teenager, but when the obvious explanations are ruled out, he gets interested. Surprise, surprise. He figures out the correct diagnosis, but when the patient takes a turn for the worse, pinning down the exact cause of the patient's illness becomes vital. Just when House figures he's got it right, another patient shows up who seems to have no connection to the original patient. When House thinks he's found the right answer, he finds that the patient's mother has lost all faith in him and won't allow treatment. Think about that.
Well, we don't have to think about it. We can talk about it.
We're not going to think about it. We just watch it passively.
Let's start differentially diagnosing Season 1, Episode 8, Poison. So, yeah, I mean, just to kick off the discussion, I would say the unique thing about Poison, because I don't think it's the last couple of episodes we've been talking about. I think we've been spoiled a bit by the themes and the patient drama and some of the character development and character backstory that's been explored. And I do think Poison is a slight step back in that. But the one thing it does have that's interesting is it's showing the writers flexing their abilities to sort of throw in interesting challenges for the team to come up against. And Poison, I would say at its heart, is just literally what happens when two patients have the same symptoms and they're disconnected and they have to find the common cause. And that's pretty much what I think the whole episode's about. Or am I simplifying it, Guess?
You could say it's, even given the opener is a boilerplate house scenario setter in a calculus exam, you could say it's house by numbers.
I mean, this intro is very unremarkable. And yeah, this definitely feels like one of those House episodes that's just It's still good, but it's definitely more of a filler episode.
Y- yeah, I think so. It I think it's less focusing on like, you know, broad ideas or philosophy or the ethics of. Well, it does talk about the ethics issues, but not on a higher register. Everything's kind of like a bit more mid-register. Everything's kind of just very much, oh, here's an ethical problem. Oh, here's a personal problem, but they're not elaborating on more complex themes throughout the episode, if you get what I mean. It's much more, let's just like, we're coming to the middle of the season, let's kind of just lower the temperature a little bit.
Yeah, I know this is like, yeah, I'm under no circumstances saying that it's poorly written. It's very good.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's just everything's done well.
Yeah.
That would be that would be the word I would use to describe it.
They found the formula. It's working really well for them. They're running with the formula this time. They do it really well. Yes.
Yeah, watching this episode because obviously we've restarted, and obviously the early episodes in the season were very much trying to find their feet, and then as we noted from episode 4, maternity, sort of each episode really did something really well that made House stand out. And this episode, when people sort of, because I have heard some people say that House can sometimes be a very like background show,
Yeah.
which they pop on and they just listen to. This is the first episode that we've watched where I totally get that.
Yeah.
I was like, I totally get why you might pop this on in the background.
Yeah. And I think you can see that by the fact that he feels a bit more like a background character. He kind of pops in, says something, pops out, and then the other characters pop into their scenarios that they're going through, and then they pop out of it and see him again. And they kind of just keep going back and forth to House as if he's some sort of. He just ties all these different plots together, and then he gets involved with the patient later on. But it just feels like House is a more. I don't know. There's nothing powerful coming out of House in terms of his character development in this episode. It's all about these mini stories.
Yeah.
The three.
Well, there's certainly, like, there are other stories here. Like, I know I said that this one didn't focus hugely on pace and drama, but
Yeah.
I'm comparing that to the last one, which was the entire episode was focused on the drama of the patients and the ethical questions.
Yeah.
And the interesting one about this is like, do you remember in Occam's Razor, we said that the big problem was that a lot of the drama was just that there was a patient, there was a girlfriend and a mother, and all of the drama was just the mother going, you're not a good girlfriend. And the girlfriend saying, oh, you're an overprotective mother. And this one is basically, even though there are two patients, so the setup here is that, as you said in the synopsis, you've got one kid comes in, he's ill, he's been poisoned something, the team can't work out what it is. And then a bit later on, another kid comes in who's also been poisoned by something. And even though there are two separate patients, and the first patient is with his mother, who's a single mother, and then the second patient like has both of his parents, all of the drama is focused on the first mother. And all they do is, as they're trying to like solve what's wrong with the patient, they make some mistakes, they make some wrong assumptions, as you would. And the drama is just that when they make a mistake, she just says, I don't trust you anymore. And then they say, well, it's part of the process. And she says, oh, I want a second opinion. And then she can't get a second opinion. And then she's just angry at the team while they're trying to do their job. And then the other patient, just the parents are just concerned.
Yeah.
So they fall completely flat. They are utterly pointless. And then like the second patient is literally just to like create this setup that, oh, like two unrelated patients, what's the environmental factor which connects them, which is the whole like setup. And it's an interesting way to frame the story. But in terms of the actual like outside of the story structure, the characters and the drama are just, that second family is just used to set up that plot. They're completely ignored. And then the rest of the drama is just them trying to do something and the mother going no, and then relenting like a scene later when they trick her, or she just gets really desperate and terrified.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting about this episode, it starts probing whether House is an addict or not. So Foreman is starting to say he's an addict. He's taking loads of pain medication. And now we're talking about the potential this student's an addict. It's like a natural rapport. Foreman's starting to question the foundations of House's authority and his judgment again. I mean, he does it consistently through some of the previous episodes, but this time that's happening. And then on top of that, he's wearing the same sneakers as House. He's wearing the same kind of jeans as House. He's also got a weird leather jacket on, which I find really disturbing. But he just, as much as he's starting to suspect House and become a skeptic of House, he's becoming more like him. And I think that's an interesting little motif, which will be elaborated on further on in the season. But getting back to your original point, before we touch on that again, yeah. But I think I agree with you that the patient drama is a little bit less fulsome than it was in the previous episodes. The main theme for the patient drama, I think, is trust. And how someone in a very extreme situation, such as their son being in hospital and maybe dying, little slips by the three main characters and then by House, so Cameron, Chase and Foreman, they start slipping up and saying things, and the mother gets very suspicious of them as a result. And it feels like just as the diseases becoming increasingly resistant to their treatments, she's becoming increasingly resistant to their judgments on things. And then it comes to a head when the main conflict between House and the patient's mother happens. So I think the theme is about trust, but we can talk more about that later. But what about the Foreman stuff?
Oh, yeah, there is, you're right, there is a bit more character development. Because do you know what we've been calling a lot of the stuff that we've seen as character development? Actually, I keep remembering to use the phrase backstory.
Yeah.
Because like stuff like Cameron's husband and stuff, that's not development, that's just her telling us stuff. So this is actually character development in that, yes, as you noted, the like Foreman and House have always had a combative relationship, and in this one it's Cameron that notes that actually they're almost quite the same.
Yeah.
And that's one of the the things that starts to worry Foreman is he becoming like House. But I do get the sense that, and you mentioned the sneakers.
Yeah.
I totally like the idea of Foreman starting to become the thing that he dislikes, and he like hates it. But having Foreman like wear the same trainers as House is quite a lazy way of showing that they have stuff in common. But I guess like showing you have ideological similarities is tougher to do. But I don't know, like just the fact that, they both wear trainers. Because like suddenly Foreman's dressing like House. They must have been working together for like 6 months by this point. Like, has this never been noted before?
It could be a new development. I mean,
I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be like negative, but like stuff like that is a bit flabby. I'm solely saying because we've been spoiled by the last 3 episodes, and just stuff like that is just quite like. I don't think that would worry Foreman. That's such a weird thing for him to worry about.
Yeah, maybe it's a lazy metaphor, I think, but like you say, it's very difficult to write all of that in. And I think of it less of a kind of very direct metaphor than just the introduction of a motif. Because between the two of them, Foreman and House, you get this sense there is a sense of friction between them, and that they have some similarities where they're both very sure of their opinions. It just happens that House is the boss and also a brilliant physician, and Foreman's the same, but he's in a junior role, and he really wants to be the alpha dog of his own kind of section, his own diagnostic medicine team, but
Yeah, completely.
isn't there yet. But he wants to go to that he wants to go down that route. And
Yeah, what was it, like 2 episodes ago? Foreman got House chucked off a
yeah,
case.
exactly. But I think I think they must have been looking in the writer's room and thinking, right, how do we start introducing this kind of, starting with a motif, but how do we elaborate more on this friction between the two characters, and how are we going to, what's their end goal, in the sense of where is the conflict taking Foreman and where is the conflict taking House? And I think they thought, okay, it's got to be that Foreman wants to be like House. He wants to emulate House, and one of the ways you can emulate House, or in this case, is through his trainers. Obviously, it's the first step. It's what I do with my boss that I admire. I just started wearing the trainers.
Well, Foreman wants to have the greatness of House, but without any of the downsides.
Yeah.
Which is is actually gone into later, especially the next episode, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm not saying that the I think stuff like the characterization of Foreman wants to be like House, but without any of the downsides, and how that's the thing that makes House great isn't that he's just a good doctor. Foreman just seems to want this good doctor quality, but House is a good doctor because he's completely insane. He's super obsessive. He is just cutthroat logical about everything. Those negative character traits make him a great doctor. And it's kind of almost naive of Foreman to just think that he can extract the good bits. People who are great, often are because of extremely strange character traits and personality, quirks.
Yeah.
And Foreman just wants to be ultra serious and very socially acceptable while just being fantastic. And it's a thing that he starts to realize he can't do. But that stuff is there. I don't know. I just think that stuff with the trainers and stuff is just a bit of a lame metaphor to do it in.
You're not you're not convinced. You're not impressed. I can tell.
Yes. Oh, yeah, no, they really need to start impressing me more.
Yeah, definitely. It's not like you've been gushing praise over the past 2 episodes, and Occam's Razor as well.
It's totally entertaining. I don't know. Even when watching it again, I was like, that's a bit weak. I don't know. Maybe I'm just in a bad mood. I have no idea.
Oh, this is a good part. So Wilson is reciting a love poem from one of House's patients who has fallen in love with him. So during the episode, we have a clinic case, and
a one character clinic case.
Yeah. At the moment, it's quality over quantity, obviously.
Mm-hmm. It's a very memorable clinic case. I actually remembered this part of the episode. But explain more about what the clinic case is and what makes it so entertaining.
So in this clinic case, it's an elderly lady. She's 82 years old, and she's come in, and she's kind of very frisky. And she's expressing her friskiness in many different ways, especially towards House. At the same time, there's this pushy son who's there, who just keeps making pointlessly snide remarks. And is a wafer-thin character there just to be the petulant, spoilt child that he obviously is by his yuppie clothing.
Yeah, this is this week's yuppie for House to dispatch.
He hates. Obviously, David Shaw hates yuppies in suits. 2005 yuppie suits at that, so they're loose-fitting and also quite bland.
Yeah, so after dispatching the yuppie, Yeah, I think it's just really he diagnoses neurosyphilis. There's a lot of like funny scenes about this babyish son being like, "Mother, you're not pure," and then yeah, there's like just her being um like silly, and then there's like quite it was quite a resonant moment when she because he gives her penicillin in order to treat the neurosyphilis, and she comes back and gives him back the prescription and is like, I'd rather like I'm starting to like even though I'm brain damaged, the brain damage from the neurosyphilis has turned her like from a quite serious person to this quite flirty silly person. She says she prefers being like that and that she'd rather die and have that, and then House tells her that actually the damage is permanent and she can take the penicillin and live and still have that brain damage and still have that personality traits. But yeah, that was quite a nice moment at the end. I do like when they extend the clinic storyline, uh, into multiple scenes rather than it just being like lots of little skits. I do love the skits, but this is one of those storylines that has to be told as a singular clinic story through multiple scenes. And I think it's a nice little storyline about someone choosing death, and happiness
But she
over a
doesn't
cure.
she doesn't have to choose. She's
No,
permanently brain damaged.
I mean, after the last episode where somebody did have to choose,
Yeah.
there was like a nice ending where the wife lived in the last episode, but then the husband had to leave her because she'd been having an affair. It's nice to have an easy way out.
Yes, of course. Um, as you know, House does not skimp on the moral dilemmas. In this one, she could have it
Mm,
all, no costs. Just
absolutely,
get
but
that 1930s syphilis cured.
yeah, but not a thematically tied episode in any way. Not a thematically tied clinic scene in any way. It's just
Hmm.
they just didn't want to do skits. They came up with an idea that would require multiple scenes, and even though it's not thematically tied, that's not a problem. It does make the episode feel like lots of things are happening, uh, which you and I agreed that I think we always prefer when everything's tied together. But in absence of that, it is a good clinic scene. It is a good clinic B plot.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Nice, refreshing twist, given there's like two dying teenagers and a very concerned mother.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we haven't talked much about the main plot, and it is really the start is just they check around the house. They're looking for environmental things. They find I believe they think it's drugs, which then brings up the kind of is House addicted to drugs conversation, which will obviously be expanded on because spoiler alert, he definitely is. And then they find like the pesticides that the kid was using, and it's quite funny. They lose the mother's trust immediately because Chase is like, "Oh, it must be the pesticides." He's then about to like inject the like cure for that into the kid, which will poison him if he isn't already poisoned by the pesticides. And the mother's like, "No, it's not the pesticides. It's he didn't use those pesticides." But just because they saw it on the can that the kid was using, they were like, "No, he's just lied to you." So they
Yeah.
like do this really weird thing where they like the whole kind of logic is that because he's a teenage boy, he therefore lies to his mother. And it just
Yeah.
turns out that he doesn't lie to his mother, and they're just like treating without any reason, just on the basis that everybody lies.
Yeah,
Which I
everybody
guess is quite
lies and
funny
it didn't
because,
work.
yeah, well, the kid wasn't lying,
Yeah.
and that made the mother not trust them because they were just making like random assumptions about them, which I know the team comes across very incompetent in this in order to drive the like mother's kind of hostility towards them. I can totally see why she doesn't trust them.
Yeah.
Uh, it they are quite insane. Like Chase about to inject this person without testing, just going, "You are wrong. Your son is a liar." I can totally see why she isn't on their side.
Yeah, I can definitely sympathize with that. I, I
But the episode then gets more interesting when the second kid comes in,
yeah.
and then it stops being a random looking around the house and being like, "Oh, you know, what might be poisoning this kid?" Then it becomes them looking for similarities, and that's quite interesting.
Mm.
Where they then start theorizing how the two cases are connected, because there are very few things which connect the like average household, like They look at the laundry detergent. They look at the bus they were on, and it's yeah, that becomes like more of an interesting like deduction game of them just basically searching around. But the start of the episode is just them saying things and losing the mother's trust.
Yeah. And I think that is the motif. That is not the motif. That is the theme of the episode. It's about trust.
Hmm.
It's about the fact that, like, presuming the teenager is lying, presuming that teenagers taking drugs, presuming lots and lots of different factors, and actually, yeah, and completely alienating the patient's mother. Completely.
Well, does anybody lie in this episode? Because really, the whole episode is, as you say, it's all about trust and lies, which a lot of the show is about. But I don't really think anyone tells any lies.
No.
It's just that the patient is unconscious and can't tell them what he did.
Yeah. And what you see in the other set of patients, although the two mothers, the other character, Chi's family, they're kind of trusting. They're trying to give as much information as possible, which is a little bit different. And probably what doctors expect, because what you see then is there's a moral dilemma at the end of the episode where House has to try and somehow convince the mother to allow him to administer the drugs that will save her child. And they do. House does say, well, you know, she'll see the other kid getting better and her child will be dead as a result. And it's all because of the fact that the other parents trust the doctors to do it. Whereas on the other hand, this mother's had a much more rocky experience and said,
yeah, well,
no way.
That's the thing. The other kids' parents trust them because they haven't gone through all of the stuff that mother has gone through.
Yeah, like Chase.
Like she has had one hell of a rocky experience with the team up until now.
Chase has gone, yeah, I've taken drugs. Of course they, of course, you know, a child can always take drugs. And she's like, no, he's not like that. He's lying to you because I lied to my mum. He's like, oh, that's like, he's gone. He's out of the circle of like trust. What did Foreman do? Did he just get really, really shirty and pompous?
Yeah, he just reiterates that they're right and that teenage boys lie. That's what the whole thing focuses on. And it yeah, they even actually I mean, you know, it's one of those interesting things where because these are the protagonists, we're on their side. We give them the benefit of the doubt. We know they can do great things.
Yeah.
But when she is asking for the CDC, Center for Disease Control, to give her a second opinion about the poisoning before they like do anything, turns out that Chase just puts on an American accent and calls her and lies to her that the CDC can't do anything.
Yeah.
And she later finds that out. And obviously everything works out and the House team was right, which is great. But from her end, she doesn't know these people and they've just consistently lied. They then totally abuse her trust at the end. And yeah, sure, they're right and they win.
Well, they didn't lie.
For her experiences,
they eroded her trust and then further eroded her trust with one last parting shot by impersonating a federal department that's in charge of disease control.
Yeah, when they couldn't convince her, they just lied to her more.
Yeah.
Which is just, I don't know, like thinking back on this and watching it again, like the team are totally insane in this.
And again, the theme of distrusting bureaucrats or federal agencies to do anything, like in the case with the schizophrenia case, which happened to be kind of inability to process copper properly. It's like always, like including in the start of this episode, the authority figure, the teacher is just like an indifferent asshole. Just you're not ill. You need a chaperone. Oh, I don't like you. Stop. Don't sit. Don't stand up. Don't stand up. And then she's like, just like convulsing on the floor, and he's completely
Yeah, the kid at the start is so ill. Like, and the teacher is acting like an insane person. But yeah, I mean, it's to establish because she sees another student lying. So you're right, actually. No, while watching this, I didn't really get the trust motif, but it's there from the start.
Yeah.
It's really good that you've picked it up because it really does tie the whole episode together.
Yeah.
Maybe I should give it more credit than I thought, but like, I don't know, everyone is just so like distrustful all of a sudden. Like he is like collapsing on the floor and she's like, let me go and see if I can get you someone to show you to the toilet.
He's just like fop sweat everywhere and he's going, D over T. I mean, if it wasn't, it is darkly hilarious. It's kind of, it did make me laugh. It's like when in the Fidelity episode where he goes, I need some electrolytes. And I just was like, what the hell are you talking about? Going through the fridge going, electrolytes, I need the electrolytes.
Yeah, it is. I guess it's a problem with TV shows in general when you do kind of stereotype the like, minor characters. And in the sense that like, you have the if you want to show like an angry dad, you don't have like 8 seasons of character development like you do with House, where you can show like all of the facets of it. You kind of just show him as an angry dad, and in that one it's like a grouchy teacher. And then in that other episode of maternity, no, not maternity, the Socratic method, the previous episode, it was like, as you say, the person from Child Protective Services who's just insanely hostile. And it's a problem with House that all of these random characters are just totally fucking unbelievable. Like, they are just so rude and obtuse.
I think it's also because they must have a complete disdain for authority. Like every authority figure, he's like either a state or federal level official, just becomes a complete absolute moron.
Everyone who works for the government is horrible in House.
There is we're watching a later episode, so we're watching Do Not Resuscitate after this, and one of the characters is that's a minor authority figure, is a judge, and he's as idiotic as well and gets fooled by House, but we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, but it's there. It's really funny, and I don't know if that goes away. We'll have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
I know that every episode I go like, oh, we should keep track of that because there's a lot going on. But it's one of those weird things. It's like, yeah, it's a shame really because like there's a lot of criticisms of the show. Like sometimes in its lazier moments it just relies on a formula too much.
Yeah.
And but one of them is just this like, yeah, these weird like stupid secondary characters that come in and they're just to cause troubles for the team and just for like House to be like, oh, I'm smarter than you, I'm going to talk down to you and trick you.
Haha, you useless bureaucrat.
Yeah, like I'm not asking for like an amazing teacher at the start, but like sometimes they could like ease off the stupid characters just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because in a way that kind of stuff, like it's almost like the world they've built is the world that House is saying is the case. Like House thinks all of these people are stupid, and it would be more interesting if I know House is like a guy who pays attention to the world and he draws patterns, but it would be nice more often if like some of the characters are just reasonable people and it just kind of caught House out that actually he's not just being hyper observant, he's actually just cynical and seeing the world in a certain way. But when every one of the characters is totally the stereotype that House thinks they are, like every government worker is an idiot, every other doctor is stupid, like I don't know, it makes House just right. And whenever people go, oh, House, you're a cynic, it's like, well, I mean, in the world you live in, everyone is exactly what he posits them to be.
Yeah, it's consistent with the fictional world that's been constructed around House.
Yeah, like if every like he's always in the clinic, and I know that the patients being in the clinic, I know that the patients in the clinic being stupid is funny, but it makes it slightly less interesting when to like sort of disagree with House saying that patients are stupid when every patient he runs into is a complete moron. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one.
It's something we'll have to kind of discuss and, like you say, keep track of throughout the seasons that we watch and the episodes. Just see if that kind of like punk rock, libertarian, don't tread on me attitude is an inbuilt facet of House's fictional world or not.
Mm.
Also, they have one of the kids wears Old Spice. Old Spice. Like 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds wear Old Spice. What the hell?
Well, I was going to say actually about this episode, I'm pretty sure this is the third time that they've broken into the first kid's house. Because the whole episode is like, they have to find a connection between these two kids, and all these kids do because they're kids is they go to school and they come home. And once they've checked out the school and no other kids are ill, it therefore has to be home-based. And it's like, yeah, they just have to keep going back to this home. So like so many scenes are just them breaking into this kid's house.
Repeatedly committing crimes.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, yeah, again, to praise the show, this information is done in an interesting way. It's Cameron and Foreman each in a different kid's house, just running around, just like reading off every like product that they have in the house, just trying desperately to find a connection, which they eventually do in the laundry detergent that they use. It turns out to be a false flag, but it's a very entertaining like way of showing that information and expressing that idea that they are just desperately looking for one connecting feature.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about it is, in this case, did they get the permission to go into the houses or not? Because we don't see them actually breaking in.
We don't, but it's always kind of taken as read. Like there are lots of scenes where they get to the door and then someone will say, oh, actually, I just asked the patient for the key. So they draw attention to the times that they don't break in enough, where I always assume that when they're in the house and they don't have that scene that they've broken in.
But then they ask them about, we saw this detergent in your house.
Well, it's a bit of a plot hole because, yeah, if they've broken in and then they go, yeah, because often they actually find something in the house and then they use that as evidence for why the person's ill and nobody goes, hang on, why do you know that?
I think in this case they must have asked for permission.
They must be, but that woman like barely wants. But remember, Gaz, that first patient barely wants to talk to them. She's like, you've abused my trust enough. I want to hear back from the CDC. I want a second opinion. I'm going to move him out of this hospital. And if they went, oh, actually, can we have your keys to go around your house as well? I don't think she'd let them. So I don't know. It's she's both not trusting at all and insanely trusting.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know which one it is.
I think we've found an inconsistency in a House M.D. episode. Oh my god.
Terrible. 1 out of 10.
I can't watch this anymore. My whole world has been shattered. I can't. The immersion is gone.
I feel kind of bad because we've been talking about the episode, but not like in the same way that we do. I think like most people who watch this listen to this podcast would know that the way that we do it is we play the episode, then we talk about it sequentially, and then we kind of draw further themes. But I think pretty much from the start we've just been talking about the 2 or 3 points,
yes,
which we had, because it's just them kind of taking like stabs in the dark about what connects these two patients. And although that's interestingly done, there's not much to explore. And they do eventually, as has just happened on the episode we're watching, they find that the two kids, they had the laundry detergent idea, which was that maybe it was seeking in through their clothes. And then they find out, well, actually, the clothes were new, and it turns out that they bought the clothes out the back of a van at school. So it wasn't the laundry detergent that was causing the problems. It was the laundry detergent, which their counterfeit clothes that they bought.
It wasn't detergent, it was dye. So the dye had actually, they didn't wash their clothes before wearing them new. And by doing so, the dye had seeped into their bodies when they were wearing them.
And that's the ending. And they theorize that based on, well, you know, it was skin based, so it must have come from somewhere. Oh, are the kids' clothes new? They double check, and that's it. And obviously, it's something that you wouldn't think of quickly, which I think is good. I think that like in terms of a conclusion, it's a great conclusion because it's not something that you would think of. It's kind of out the box thinking, and so therefore the problem is obvious. It makes sense, but it's not obvious enough that that the team would think about it instantly. So it kind of warrants that they would spend the 40-minute runtime trying to think of it. But it's still a fairly like it's a good plot device, and it's fine. But there's nothing really to particularly analyze in this one. I feel like this is definitely one of the more like just secondary filler episodes of House in that sense. It hits all the right places,
Yeah.
but it does everything well, but not in not in a standout way. And I can totally see why. I mean, did you remember this episode having gone back to it? I know that you obviously watched the series fairly recently.
No, not this one.
So you'd only watched it like a couple of months ago and you'd already forgotten it.
No, this one in particular, I did remember some of the plot points, but I mean, it's as I said at the beginning, it's house by numbers. I think by the numbers, it's kind of taken the formula, it's running with it really well. It doesn't take one of the broader, doesn't take a bigger theme. Trust is big, but
there's a theme here at the very least, which I hadn't noticed, but I'm glad you did.
there's the trust theme, but there's nothing like big, massive philosophical that then gets kind of woven into the characters or the backstory of the characters in a way that you find with Occam's Razor, for instance. That's really interesting. Or in the other one, it was maternity, or was it maternity? Yeah, where there's just so much drama at stake, so much tension about what do you do when to cure someone, to save someone's life, you must sabotage your own relationship, to question the foundations of which your relationship is based. You know, that's not here.
Yeah, I mean that's got a lot of gravity.
Yeah,
whereas
that's true. Gravity's a good way to describe it. This one's a little bit more loose. It's a little bit more.
This is Pluto.
Yeah.
Maternity is Jupiter in terms of gravity.
Wow, that's quite a claim. I wouldn't say it's that lightweight on this episode.
Okay, it's Mars.
Wow.
Pick a what's a planet with a good gravitational pull?
Mercury.
There you go.
It's
That's
smaller.
Right. It's dense. In the bad way.
Man, you're giving no mercy to the writers of this episode, huh?
I think no, I'm not. No, do you know what? I don't actually. It's because do you know what? It's because I don't have anything to say, so I'm just being mean.
But I think the set piece confrontation towards the end of the episode is really interesting because it's House and Mother coming together to try.
Yeah, but as it's very, as you say, it's very House by numbers. We've in the pilot episode he had the big moment where he had to, and in the pilot episode and Damned If You Do, where he had to do it to the nurse, the nun. There are these big moments where House has to really go and personally interact with the patient and convince them of the treatment. And but this doesn't seem significant like those. It's just rounding it off. It's very House by numbers. It's like it's a great scene, very well written, very well performed by Hugh, Laurie, and I don't know who acts as the mother, but it's just kind of there. It's just good.
But it's basically saying, he was saying, look, I'm here. The person you've asked a second opinion will give you a second opinion. Maybe not. You don't know. But I'm here now, and I've got an answer, and I'm just asking you to trust me to do it, because I won't let you down in trying to find the answer for you. I won't let you down in trying to save your son. Whereas the guy from CDC will just will either confirm or deny the hypothesis that House is working with, which is important. She's only trying to do the best for her son. But without that leap of faith, which trust engenders, she can't make a decision. So it's not just about trust, it's about trust and decision making. She's making all these resolute judgments and decisions about who she wants to treat them, but she won't make the decision about how or when or if to treat the disease.
Yeah.
That's the issue. You know.
No, that's fair. She's I mean, there is a bit of characterization with her that she's very controlling.
Yes.
Which is why all of their assumptions about teenage boys defying their parents, it actually sounds like that actually she's just a very controlling mother, which is why her teenage son isn't off the wall lying to her. He just doesn't really have any freedom. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's a
there is.
presumption. That's an assumption and a half that he has no freedom. Maybe he just is not as messed up as we are.
I'm making the same mistake as the team. I'm
Yeah,
making too many
you are.
assumptions about him. But I mean in the sense that like they even have a discussion at the end where she's like, "Oh, I shouldn't be so hard on you." So I don't know. I get the sense that he is quite a controlled kid, but it kind of I do like that over parenting, helicopter parenting thing. Like
Yeah.
leaks in, as you say, to how she handles the case, and that she just wants second opinion. She just wants to control everything. And then House says a second opinion actually is worth nothing because your kid will be dead. So just leave it up to us. But
The other,
she still doesn't really have a lot of reason to trust them.
yeah, and also there's a hilariously offbeat comedy moment at the end of the episode. They put some funny little kind of country and western backing in, and they walk and Foreman and House are walking into the lift, and a little bit of a uplifting guitar swang going on as they look down to look at each other's shoes.
Yeah,
Oh,
like I mean,
look at that
would they have got the point?
levity. I'm laughing.
Would they have got the point across more if they'd have been wearing like the same shirt as well? How many items of clothing? I can't believe they didn't throw in another item of clothing. It really seems to be that they like the same trainers.
Foreman no, you can't get rid of the leather jacket. I'm sorry.
Maybe House could wear the same leather jacket. Incredible. What great writing.
That was a fantastic note to end it on. Just a bit of levity at the end, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very light-hearted episode. It wasn't like the drama wasn't particularly intense. It was just nice. It was quite a light-hearted, fun episode, especially with the clinic.
And the mom basically calling them out as assholes.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just the assholes who saved you. Well, I didn't. That's not verbatim. That's just me summing up what she really wanted to say.
Yeah, she does like still hate the doctors at the end, but it's quite interesting as well because the patient is unconscious the whole time. We basically see him pass out and shit himself in a calculus test, and then at the end he just wakes up and is like, "Hi, Mom," and then they just go home.
So I've had
very, I mean, I understand that the patient has to be unconscious for the plot to work, or else he would say, "Oh, by the way, I bought some weird counterfeit trousers and they're killing me."
Well, he wouldn't know that. He would say, "I'm just really sick."
Yeah, but they'd say, "Oh, have you done anything significant in the last 48 hours?" And he'd say, "Well, I did buy some trousers off the back of a van."
Yeah.
Like that would come up.
Yeah, that would.
And, so, yeah, I don't know. It's, but yeah, the patient in this it doesn't really matter. He's literally just a blob of meat with just a mother arguing about him.
Hey, Mom, who are those people? Oh, just the assholes who saved your life, honey.
But well, I think we've sort of praised and cut this one apart.
Oh, that's not true. We praised it, and I thought it came out really nice. You kind of just don't think it suits the high intellectual demands that you want of all the episodes. You want them all to be like the Socratic method or something.
I need the highest quality now, Gaz. Anything below perfect is not good enough. No, I meant in the sense that, we were obviously taking the piss out of some bits and enjoying bits. I think this is a perfectly good episode, but in summation, what do you have any other thoughts, or is it just that? Because I think this is like good to middling. It's fine.
It's a little bit looser than the other episodes.
Yeah, House by Numbers is a perfect way, and I think you summed it up really well. It's this is the formula that people talk about when they think of House. But yeah, what other thoughts did you have on it?
Now I come to think of it, like the end part with the goofy music, just felt like a bit like Scrubs. It felt like the ending of a Scrubs episode where, like, JD and Dr. Cox are in a lift and they look down and go, "Oh, my trainers are the same as yours. Oh, isn't that interesting?" It could have been completely lifted from that.
Do you know what? Scrubs is a very interesting comparison because I'm not a big fan of Scrubs.
Yeah.
I but that's just because it's not really the type of comedies I enjoy. But also, I do have a problem with its tone. I think that it goes from emotional to wacky, and I don't really like that kind of thing. I don't think it works.
I think
Which
that's.
people can disagree with me on that, but that's just my taste. I like things to be consistent.
I think I've differentially diagnosed your mild displeasure with this episode. It has a bit of that goofy, wacky with the seriousness, and you're like, "Ooh, I don't like it."
Maybe that's it.
I've
Maybe that's
differentially
it.
diagnosed you.
Absolutely. God, I've really been taken out to pasture.
My
You've seen
pleasure.
right through me. This whole thing's a joke. Unless something follows very strict guidelines, I can't enjoy it. It's why the only show I like is House. It's the only art form that I enjoy.
If it's not serious and dark.
One tone, grey tone. But well, fair enough. I mean, should we leave it there?
Yeah, I guess. Do you like Philip Glass? I'm just trying to recognize a pattern here. Do you just like repetitive, minimalist music as well? Because that might also figure into your monotonous taste.
I only listen to the House M.D. soundtrack. Well then, well, thanks thanks to everyone who listened to this. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for co-hosting with me again, Gaz. Do you have a good time?
Always a pleasure, never a chore.
But yeah, just another enjoyable chat about House MD, and we'll be back next Monday with to have a chat about the next episode, which I did actually learn this week. It's DNR, Do Not Resuscitate.
It's a good one.
But yeah, and as always, you can tweet us your thoughts at House MD Cast, because House MD Podcast was already taken. And yeah, just let us know what you think, your thoughts, and yeah, I mean, if you want to, you can check this out on any of the platforms we're on. We're on Spotify, iTunes, all the big ones, and we're even on YouTube. But I understand that's in like video format, so that doesn't quite fit what a podcast is about. But yeah, get in touch with us, leave us a comment any way you can, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the podcast or on the episodes or anything house related, actually. So yeah, that's how you can get in touch with us if you want to. But until then, we'll see you next Monday.
All right. See you soon.